Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to the Infinite Way, where spirituality meets humanity. And we are continuing our conversation, part 5, with Carlos Concepcion on LaserEduLogics, Liberate Your Mind and Body with Liberal Arts, Yoga, and Kabbalah. And for those of you who may not have seen a couple of the episodes, liberal arts and sciences, trivium, quadrivium are the rainbow of the human spirit. They contain the best kept secret in educational history, and they are the cognitive code that turns on the coherent biophoton white light of consciousness. I love that sentence. And that is an opening sentence that describes the trivium, quadrivium, these 7 basic parts of the liberal arts that we're going to be discussing. And so welcome, Carlos.
Hello, everybody. Pleasure to be here.
And we're so excited to have you here. And on this episode, we did talk about basically how the trivium and quadrivium and the grammar and the essence of the grammar all came together. But I want to go back and I want to recapture something, and I want to digress a little bit. I want you to go back to the ladder that you described for Masonry, because it represents the Hermetic society that we were talking about that embraced the trivium and quadrivium. Would you start us off a little bit with the basic steps and the ladder of the Freemasonry? And I want to digress, and I want to kind of understanding of that particular society as opposed to coming back to LaserEduLogics.
Yes, excellent question. The ladder, the mysterious ladder in the Masonic tradition, and it's a fundamental symbol. And not only is it symbolical, but it's really the foundation of the education of a Freemason. I myself I'm not an initiate of the Freemasonry organization, but my guru, Dr. Serge Reynald de la Ferrière, was a 33-degree master of that, a noble organization. And he was so gracious to reveal the insight, the history, and the fundamental role that this 7-step ladder represents in the Masonic tradition. I'm a translator of his book on Freemasonry, the Black Book of Freemasonry, which is now in process of publication, first in the English edition. And this is where I learned for the first time the power that that the Masons developed through the secret of this ladder initiation. The ladder not only represented a scale of initiation, but it also represented the master, how to acquire the mastery of all the secrets of that tradition. Now, LaserEduLogics uses the Mason, the ladder, the 7-step ladder of the Masons, which is composed of the 7 liberal arts on one side and the 7 virtues on the other. And I loved it because in most traditions, they in the liberal arts it's taught in college. There's a lot of emphasis on, of course, the intellectual development that the liberal arts give us, right? The intransitive inner development of the human mind. But they often forget, or it's not highlighted, that the power of the virtues that are applied with it, that gives you the ability to execute on. And that balance between virtuousness and intellectuality is a hallmark of an initiate. And this is what a Freemason actually is, it's a complete initiate. And so the 7 liberal arts are fundamental to the development of the characters of this organization. And that's why if you see, like we had discussed in our previous discussion on podcast 4, we discussed America and how the founding father was a Mason, and how Roosevelt and Truman, who ushered in the knowledge society, the knowledge world, the new era of knowledge, and how they put that stamp in it. But if you go into the Washington Memorial Masonic uh, uh, home he has in Alexandria, Virginia, I mean, the clarity and the history of this is beautiful. They have a room just dedicated to the American history of Masonry and how the presidents illustrated all this and but now, since we're in a new age, all this that was kept secret and hermetically sealed within this organization is now coming. They're now in the service of all of us, of all of humanity. So this is what the reason why LaserEduLogics considered the Mason, the Freemason organization as a key exemplar in the universally educated person's journey to self-mastery.
So I want to dive into some of the most things that are right there in plain sight that maybe our audience isn't educated on, because in reading and in understanding, some of the puzzle pieces started fitting together, right? So we understand that the Masons go back, but let's talk about present day, where many of us know that there are many types of apprenticeships, okay? Masons being one of them, Masons dealing with bricklaying, et cetera, and we really don't think twice about that, right? You become an apprentice, then after an apprentice, you become, let's say, a master builder, and after the master builder, you know, so on and so forth. But I really want to go back to talk about what that meant during the 17 and 1800s, when a lot of times, and you know, people look at movies and two things don't click. They'll look at a movie and then they see the knight, and the knight takes on an apprentice, and the apprentice goes, "Oh, please, please, will you take me on?" And knight says, "I'll take you on." And then from there, you get to know the knowledge of how I get to work for the king and such and such and such a thing. But really, when you look at our architecture, when you look at the types of buildings that were built, like the Chartreuse des Lourdes in I want to say that's in, isn't that in Canada? Or is that in France? There's the Chartreuse des Lourdes because it has the labyrinth. It has the famous labyrinth that people walk. I want to say the Chartreuse des Lourdes.
Oh, Lourdes? Lourdes? That's in
Lourdes.
Paris.
Thank you.
Yes.
That's in Paris. Okay. And they have a mimic of the labyrinth of that particular church in Canada. Okay.
Oh, I see.
Okay. But when you look at the one in France, okay, and we look at the architecture, you know, like a lot of us see architecture and we go, "Oh, it's beautiful, and it's carved this." We think of sculptors. But we're not talking about sculptors. We're talking about masons who are masters at their craft, who have acquired the knowledge of sacred geometry, who have acquired the knowledge of sacred numbers and numerology, who have acquired the knowledge of astronomy in order to lay out that architecture. And then we talked last week a little bit about our hidden in plain sight, and the fact that even Washington, D.C., for example, laid out completely in a sacred geometry as its guidelines for the architecture and the knowledge base that you had to have for that. And that these apprentices were really initiates. And then these terms that we throw around so loosely are initiates. Could you talk to us a little bit about that?
Right. Well, yes, this is the fundamental that we're concerned with. The education gives you the cognitive competence to recognize these symbols all around us. We're immersed in them. They were built by these master builders, as you say. They have a whole history. I mean, our cities are designed by these master craftsmen, and they imbue their buildings with these symbols, these sacred geometrical symbols. That even the grid of the streets are designed in such ways that we're living in it, we're breathing it. These symbolic forms, and again, this is what education does. It creates awareness of the world that we are aware of, that we were born into, and empowers us then to develop as well, to inherit the culture, to inherit the secret knowledge that's embedded in these symbols. These are not just pretty, as we had discussed earlier, like in the Bible. These symbolic forms actually form us. They develop us. They create universal awareness. And so these craftsmen, they inherited that tradition, and this is a function of also the liberal arts. They become the transmitter. Transmission of culture, of history, of knowledge is done through these arts. And like you said, if you go to witness these cathedrals in France and all over the world, you'll find that the architecture itself is musical. The architecture is astronomical. The architecture is geometrical, is numerical. And so, you're living the liberal arts as you see them, and this is what inspires us. And this is the wisdom of the ages, that it's inscribed, in stone. And so, yeah, the more educated we become, the more we can appreciate it, the more we can live it.
And I want to highlight some of the things that you said, because you talked about the wisdom, right? So after reading that, the fact that there was a brotherhood of Freemasons of cathedrals just to build cathedrals, and that the Hermetics that held that transmission in order to educate those who wanted to build cathedrals passed on the geometries, they passed on the sacred numbers, they passed on the rites and the symbols of the work, and the sense of tools that were called blue or symbolic masonry. Okay. And that really spurred something within, because we talked a little bit and briefly about how the knowledge was passed on from, and I'm going to call it, how the Black Book of Masonry call it, like the prehistoric masonry. Okay, when we go back to the societies of, like, for example, Moses, Ma, and the tribe that he represented, and the, what was the other one, Helsa, that other tribe, and that these initiations and this knowledge was passed down from generation to generation to generation to generation, all the way until today. And that we as a people have so much symbolism, and even in greetings, words that are actually utilized as symbolism to understand one recognizing another in conversation that may not even know one another. But because of the way the conversation took place and the words that were used and the grammar that was stated in the greeting, they can recognize one another from society to society. And how all of this is around us in this symbolism, and why I deem LaserEduLogics so important, to be able to know and to understand and to open up an awareness of something that's been taking place all around you, and you're just not able to recognize it because of the lack of awareness. When you look at the prehistoric masonry piece and its effects on what's been kept secret or what's been kept or held back to today, how great is that hold? How great is that hold on us such that we're missing it in so many different levels?
Absolutely. You know, this gap between the knowers, the haves and the have-nots, those who have the knowledge and those who don't have the knowledge, is really the dividing line that created, well, again, what we talked about, the master-slave system. And the idea of participating in the culture was a privilege, really, only to those who understood how all this was created, how all this was put together. And if you didn't have the knowledge, then you could not really participate. You can only serve the system, but you're not a creator. You're not a participant in an equal measure. And so now we have the possibility, of course, thanks to this new age of knowledge that we have entered, the conditions of equality are now just right for us then to be able to participate, but it starts with the knowledge. Without the knowledge, you cannot participate. You see, you can live, but you don't exist. You see, and that's the difference. Because consciousness is what gives you existence. And so, and you know, you have a life, but you don't exist. This is what Descartes brought back, you know, the idea that I think, therefore I am. In other words, for man to exist, he has to be able to think. And in other words, existence starts with thinking. And this is what differentiates us. And this is the foundation of a genuine education. That's what it does. It trains us, it educates, it cultivates that faculty. And so for us to really participate in all this culture that we have inherited, right, from the master, on these master builders, we need to cultivate that knowledge in order to really appreciate what that knowledge really represents, what that knowledge really does, and now is the time. That's the mission of LaserEduLogics, right? To give access, but also not only access, because we already have the access, it's already here. I mean, it's all available. But the competence, the capability, the cognitive competence to be able to appreciate that and to participate in it, to exist at that level.
So when we talk about the cognitive competence, this is really serious because I'm sitting here and I'm reading and I'm working and I'm working and I'm reading. And, you know, one of the things that I've learned when I'm reading is research, right? I'm one of those people that will take an existing text and I will read it and I will highlight every word that I don't understand. Then I will pause and I will go back and I will research and not only just get the understanding of that word, but I now started learning to look at the etymology of the word because it may not be Webster's dictionary definition of exactly what I believe it's supposed to state, right? Because many things have many meanings, and it is the basis of the word and the context of the root of the word, which is where you can find out what it means when you're actually unveiling and you're trying to understand and research. And then also with that, I read it the first time to just read it. I read it the second time to just comprehend it and just enjoy it and really take it in, because now I'm not just figuring out what does it say. Now I'm like reading it in the context of knowing what the words are and knowing what it means. And then I read it a third time because now I've enjoyed the flow, and now I can read it for maybe what it's not saying.
Mm.
what it's not saying. How do we build our cognitive understanding in study? Because I think that that is a fundamental piece that we don't talk about. We just say, oh yeah, you gotta study, but people don't know how to study. I was recently talking to someone who's doing their dissertation, and she was just basically saying, well, I gotta figure out what I gotta do, and I just have to do, I'll find some reference books and I'll read it, and I'll grab what I need and I'll go on, but she's not researching. She's not truly grasping and researching and basically bringing that level of knowledge to a place where there's a comfort level of everything that she's read to be able to formulate that which she needs to for a book or for her writings. So talk to us a little bit about the cognitive, the capability of that cognitive learning and how we impose it.
Yeah, and that's really the mission of the liberal arts. Really, that's what it's really about. That it goes right into, and I think it was Noam Chomsky that really honed it in. He established grammar not simply as a language tool, you know, that we use to communicate in the world and to be in the world, and but that it is biological, it is neurological, that it is an embedded system of knowledge in genetically. We are genetically endowed with this capability, with this linguistic competence. And he illustrates it by, for example, a 2-year-old, he's called it the poverty of input theory, right? And this, when you're a child, all of a sudden at 2 years old, you start speaking fluently. You start talking and automatically. Where did the kid learn that grammar? Because what Chomskyan linguists did was they went in and they studied the structure of the syntax, the coherency of the syntax, and the level of advanced grammar that a 2-year-old is already articulating. Mind you, all this is what his brain is doing. He's not self-aware of it. This was what happens when you further developmental reflection and advanced understanding and mastery of all the arts. That's where you come to the self-reflection and understanding of all these structures. But we start out already at 2 years old with an advanced grammar syntax, okay, that we did not learn from our parents. And we just simply didn't learn it from mimicking them, okay? No amount of mimicking or rehearsing or repeating like a parrot is going to give you that grammar. This is what Chomsky and biological linguists, biolinguistics established, that this is something that is already inherent. This is what they call the innate theory of knowledge, where and it goes back to Plato, in fact. And the rationalists, they sustain that theory, that thesis, that knowledge is embedded in us. And so that culture, cultivation, and education is to draw it out. But what is it drawing out? It's drawing out a database of knowledge that's already there. And so we're building on it, we're constructing, we're builders and constructors of a foundation that is so powerful. And this is where language takes off. Now, if you don't master the liberal arts, what happens is you continue to use this embedded knowledge system, okay, this linguistic competence that we have since we're 2 years old. But because we didn't understand or focused it or reflected on it or focused on it, you know, systematically, what happens is we go on using it automatically. And so, you know, a person may use language all their entire life, but they're not masters of it. You cannot be master of something automatically or unconsciously. Or, you know, this is what we were discussing in the beginning, the difference between living and existing. You see, you become an existent when you know, when you have the knowledge and you're a master of that system, of that life. And this is what starts to happen when you teach the liberal arts, when you develop grammar and logic and rhetoric and the four art and all the arts, and then the application of those arts in different fields. You know, this is what happens. That's how we become a master of ourselves and masters of different areas or disciplines of professions, whatever. You see, but that's how that competence is developed. You have to first focus on the structure itself and the genetics of that structure, the biological genetics of language. And then you cultivate that by nurturing it. And this is what true education, a genuine education, is supposed to do. And it'll take it to its logical fruition. You know, just like when you water the fruit, the seed, you water it, you give it the sunlight and the earth and the minerals, and now that seed will fructify. It'll produce what it was meant to produce, and this is what the humans have. You know, we have this potential, but it needs that focus, and it has to be done right. Otherwise, we underdevelop. And this is the situation that we have today, that we live in a culture that is embedded in all these advanced architectonic symbols, but we cannot appreciate them. We cannot really enjoy them fully until we have that knowledge and knowledge of who created this architecture, this wonderful architecture that we live in, this harmonics. You see, and it's like the Greeks created the Parthenon, right? And all these elaborate, theaters and everything. And you go there and you can breathe the golden number, the golden
Yes.
ratio, the divine proportion. Beauty
Yes.
is proportion. And so you sense it, you can sense it, but if you don't have the knowledge of the golden ratio, the number that created that architecture, the number that's responsible for the beauty and the harmony of this architecture, you can't really get to the cause of that. You can only the pleasure of it. You have the pleasure of it, but you don't have the insight, the intuitive penetration, the harmonic flow that you can live, the intuitive, higher intuitive flow that comes with that knowledge. And this is what the liberal arts give us. Yes.
And that's what I wanted to get to, because, when you're painting and you're an artist, some artists will say that the painting informs the artist. The artist is painting, but the painting informs the artist when it's done. There's this energy, there's this connection, there's this flow of what is coming from you in that creative juices, but also what is being expressed on that paper informs you because of its energy, because you're creating and you're extending yours to build. And as these architectures are there and they're divinely aligned via astronomy, and at that certain moment, that certain time when it aligns with the moon or it aligns with the star system and it aligns with this and this, and it's energized, and there's an energy exchange that takes place between that building and that system in the universe.
Yes.
Makes an impact, changes the energy. And this is why I think it's so important for us to understand the role that the Freemasonry or the Brotherhood of the Masons that built these cathedrals and this society that laid out the sacred geometries, and the architects that do it today, what they are embracing and what they are doing when they create.
That's right.
And so I'm going to take it to a different place. I look at this ancient knowledge, this beautiful ancient history, the initiates passed down of this knowledge, generation to generation to today. And then I look at augmented reality and the digital world and the internet. Help us bring this together, because to me, it's like clash. I want to go back to the ancients. I want to know what the ancients know. I want to live, eat, sleep, and breathe the initiatory way of knowledge and grow in the cognitive sense of the ancients. And then we have augmented reality. And for those of you who don't know, that's like the intersection of the real world and the digital information age. And, you know, where is AR and VR taking us? And how does this fit? How does it really fit to help us grow and to help us truly grasp that which we're missing in the first place?
Wonderful question. Uh, you know, when you stood in front as an initiate, they, you know, you had to kneel or stand in front of the Great Pyramid of Giza, and they will ask you before you can enter to be initiated. They ask you, where do you come from? Where are you? And where are you going? Okay, and it's all connected. You know, we are today the result of the past, and the future is the result of what we're doing today. And it's all connected. Time is a continuum, all right, in consciousness. And so, you know, we have to be aware of how the living present is a flow. And so right now we're talking about augmented reality but what is augmented reality? Well, now we're taking information, we're interacting in the real world. Now we're taking all that digital knowledge that we've acquired, all that digital logic, right, that we already discussed, comes from the binary logic, that comes from Leibniz, and Leibniz got it from the I Ching. All the ancient knowledge is integrated in the digital logic. The digital logic is the result of that binary logical system, of that binary logical calculus that Leibniz invented in the 16th century. And he got it from the I Ching, this wonderful yin-yang symbol of the universe, and with all that language that was coded and therefore integrated into the history of mathematics. And now we've come to the point where now we're integrating it into our daily lives through the internet. So there is no separation between the past and the living present. And there's no separation between the living present and the future. The integration of the past and the differentiation of the future in the living present. We're always in the living present. And so the awareness that we bring into that, as the knowledge that we're bringing in from the past is shaping the way we're living today. How we shape the future depends how universally aware we are of how to use that knowledge has been integrated into our living present. So yeah, augmented reality, when virtual reality is immersing yourself in this program space and utilizing all that advanced mathematics and all that advanced graphics. It's all the same. It's geometrical. It's numerical. And so the artist that is creating these spaces, okay, if he has that universally educated platform, what we call the universally educated person, now he can go and create in these platforms the beauty and the harmonies and the understanding. If he doesn't have it, then what happens now, he's still going to be determined, because you have to, the form or the formal system will determine how much you can do. It limits, it circumscribes you to working with what's there. Okay, so all those laws are already established. Now, how creative you can become in that space, it determines how creative your mind is. So there's really no limit to the creativity of what you could do in an augmented, in a virtual reality space. You see, and this is the reason why we need to get that foundation, that proper foundation, because then that gives us a legitimate, coherent understanding on the one side and application on the other. you see. And so that's the beauty of this. So augmented reality, okay, so now we have all this knowledge, this universal digital space is now inscribed in our eyeglasses, so directly into our eye when we talked about the retinal laser display. Now I can use, I'm walking here in the streets of Punta Cana, and I want to know about this resort, the history, who's responsible, what they do there. I get all the information right there. If I'm driving down, I want my map, my Google map right there in front of me, in field view. I don't have to be looking away from the road. I'm driving because all the information that I need is called situational awareness. That's what augmented reality is bringing to us. All that knowledge, and so that we can use it as we're living. All right. And so, but it's the same, there's no difference between augmented reality and traditional reality. It's the same reality. Augmented because it's expanding our field of knowledge use. Before I walked, I didn't have the information. I had to call somebody to tell me, when this place is going to be open, or do I want to go there, or do I need to go there, whatever. Now I got all that information right in front of my eyes, right in front of me, in my field of view. And so all that creativity in technology is really going to be fruitful, creative, or destructive, or manipulated, depending on the ethos of the person who's developing it, the developers and the users. It all depends on the ethos, and that's of course the rhetoric portion of the trivium. This is why it's so important to develop, a proper use of language, to develop a respect for the impact that this information space is going to have on society, right? And this is, of course, this is what education really is all about, cultivating good characters, and not only good characters but wise characters. People with wisdom and knowledge that they are responsible for the future of society, and they are consciously designing and consciously creating with that, with that responsibility. This is what we need.
You talked about the ethos of and the responsibility of just bringing forward the right kind of wisdom forward so that we can digest it. And I remember reading in your book about how certain companies, mainstream companies, I forgot the term that you used, but it was how they repeat information so that you grasp it, you grasp the repetition as what's been taught, to get you to act on whether you want it or not, something that they want to sell you or work with you on or project to you because of the repetition that they're using, because we learn by repetition. So if I see a commercial from Google that says, I need that computer, I need that computer, I need that computer, and run around thinking I need that computer, is that the responsibility that you're basically saying, is that we need to bring forward true wisdom and knowledge forward versus how maybe it's being used today? Because a lot of times I look at the commercialism that we deal with and the stuff that we kind of have to scrub through. I mean, people spend hours and hours and hours and hours on repeating things to the public on products that we don't need, information that we don't need to hear, and things that we shouldn't be doing, but they get us to do it because it's been repetitively stated to us over and over again. So we believe that we need to do it.
Right.
I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, that is a fundamental question that LaserEduLogics addresses. The idea that we live in the economy of the economics of attention, the attention economy. That's what the economists are calling it.
Okay.
And the reason, well, we're living in the attention economy because the most important resource that we have is our attention. Where we place our mind, our energy follows. And so attention, we have an abundance of information, right? But we have a scarcity of attention.
Yes.
And this is something that's so important, it's so valuable. Most people don't suspect this, but this is so valuable. For one example, they call it aggregate and advertise. Okay. And that's the twin program that they use at Google, Microsoft, Apple, all the digital companies who are masters of that universe. That's exactly what they do. That's how they sell their products. For example, Google doesn't have a product, or in a way that it sells our attention to advertisers. Okay, so Google will spend $30 billion on freeware, Gmail, search, all these programs that you're getting for free, right? Well, it's not free. It's costing Google $30 billion a year to provide that service. Now, why are they giving out $30 billion worth of free software? Well, they make $80 billion a year from that free giveaway. They make $80 billion in advertising. So they aggregate your attention through the software application, Gmail and search, and the different platforms that they provide. See, that's how they aggregate your attention. And so you have to navigate, but they all do it. Apple does it, they all do it because that's the model, aggregate and advertise. The main revenue source for Google is advertising. They make $80 billion a year, $20 billion a quarter. And so, that's their business model. Their product is you. I am. And so if you don't navigate in this space with that awareness of the business model that they're using to manipulate your attention, because that's the give and take. It's not free. It appears to be free, but it's not. And so this is where you have to be master of your attention, because what they're doing is they're manipulating your attention, and they're using your attention for their purposes. Of course, it's a give and take. I use Gmail and I use search. It's a wonderful service, but just be careful how you're giving your attention and how you're being manipulated in this space, so that you can navigate it through it consciously. And this is what a genuine, this is what LaserEduLogics is about, informing, educating, so that you can be master of your attention, your most precious resource. That resource is so valuable that a company like Google is willing to spend $30 billion. How much do you think Amazon is spending? And the other ones, we're talking serious money here. And why? Something as simple as your attention. But it's not that simple. It is your most precious resource. And this is how, when we go to school, for example, we're training our attention to focus, to put it on being productive, on cultivating ourselves, and being the best that we can be. You see, that's where the discipline of the liberal arts are so fundamental, because they give us not only the power to be the best that we can be, but it gives us the power to be aware of the culture in which we're participating, be economic, technological, whatever, because it all goes down, it all trickles down to us, and this is where that awareness comes in, of the space this is another reason why being a universally educated person is so important, because we get funneled into these specializations, right? And so that's all we learn how to think through. I think accordingly. And so, you're funneled, you're indoctrinated in these spaces of knowledge, but you don't create that universal awareness. You see, you're not just a specialist, you're a husband, you're a brother, you're a sister, you participate in the economy, you participate in culture, you participate in a spiritual universe. And so if you don't have that awareness, and you can easily get victimized, you see. And this is something that, that's our responsibility as educators, is to help people expand that awareness, so that they can then participate as free persons, not as a slave.
I can't highlight what you just said enough, because I am so tired of hearing people say, you know, my attention can only hold 30-second sound bites. You know, as people throw out, you can only grab a person's attention for 30 seconds and then they're going to go off to the next thing, because we lack the discipline to be able to focus and have attention. And I've always said this thing, which is that if I'm trying to express something, and my quote unquote marketer tells me that it's too long, it's past 30 seconds, and I'm not going to hold their attention, I don't want their attention. Because if I can't get a hold of somebody who can hold their attention more than 30 seconds, that's a problem.
Absolutely.
That's a problem. And what are we going to? And I guess, what is this counter attack on the culture to not be able to focus? I really need to understand that. And I don't know if you have an opinion. I'm digressing a little bit. In your research for LaserEduLogics, because this is a problem. You know, when you go and you are trying to conduct business to express your livelihood, and you go to a marketing person and they really sit down and will break it down to you for social media, for this, for that, the other. Oh, it can't be more than 30 seconds. Oh, it can't be more than 60 seconds. You know, the most popular pieces are the reels, because the reels are 60 seconds or less, because people just don't have the attention span anymore. And then what you're saying is that we have to have the self-discipline to counter this. Otherwise, we're going to find ourselves taken advantage by the system by which was created to lure you away, to lure your attention, which is the most valuable thing that we have, that you just expressed.
That's right. That's exactly right. That's right. And you have to understand that the system is a continuation of the master slave system. We have what we call the client server model. The client server model is how information is fed in the system. And so the client server model is the same model as the master slave. The masters are the servers, and the client is the slave to that system. And so when we're participating in a system that is designed to use us as slaves, in other words, to enslave our attention system, our attention to whatever it is that they are promoting. And so if you don't understand that you're in a master slave system called the client server, that's the reason, again, if you see why, again, in America, for example, there's this huge debate about, the 1% versus the 99%. Well, you know, if you look at who are the companies that are the richest, you know, we got $5 trillion companies, okay? Microsoft, Google, Apple, Amazon, and Facebook, right? And what are they using? And then where's everybody else? Okay, there's freedom of access, but are you master of your data? What are they doing with your data, with your personal data, with your data that you're using online? Who controls that data? Your personal data. Who controls it?
Yeah.
The server. You see, and who's the richest right now? Where's all the money? In the servers. They're the masters of that system. And so, of course, things are changing. We're going into what we call the blockchain, which is a transparent system, okay, and it's universal, and it's more equilateral, you know, it's egalitarian in a way. The blockchain is the liberator in that sense, but that's another discussion. There's more technical, and so. But the real key here is self-knowledge. And this is another reason why we were promoting the idea that you should be a programmer, that you should learn to program, so you can help transition us out of this master slave system that we're still in. Because all they did it was these computer scientists, because they ignored the liberal arts, they just inherited, and the powers that be dictated to them the model that they wanted. And the model that they want, of course, is the model that has always worked for the rich and powerful, you know, for the elite. And so they just coded the system that was dictated to them by the rich, right? I hire a programmer. I tell him, look, I want you to program this. I want you to create this and that. And the programmer, he goes and does it. And so this is what we need to educate the programmers. The programmer needs to be a free man, a free individual, a liberal artist, so that then he can examine the programs that he's being called to program. He can examine it, question it, stop it in its tracks. Why am I going to be a servant of a client service system that is just designed to perpetuate a master slave system? Why? When I'm a free person, I got knowledge, I got power. This is, you have that. You're a computer whiz. You have programming skills. You have power. But how you use that power is determined by your level of education, your level of awareness, your responsibility, your ethos. You see
I love
that?
this.
And that's how we got this client service system. And that's why, yeah, yes.
No,
And
no, go
so,
ahead, please
yeah,
finish.
we absolutely need programmers to become liberal artists because they are being unwittingly used to perpetuate that system. And we're now transitioning to a new age where we have all the capabilities and all the powers that be, but the technological power, but we don't have the liberal understanding of it. We don't have the liberating power of the minds that are using, they're users of the power, but they're not cognizant, you see. And so this is why the liberal arts as trivium and quadrivium, in other words, as an integrated, full spectrum, knowledge-based, cognitive code that unleashes your self-awareness, that is what we need and not only for the programmers, we need the scientists, we need the photonics engineers, we need the lawyers. We need every responsible knowledge worker to be the best that they can be, so that we can have a future, and because the future depends on who creates what we're doing today. You see, that's the key.
Here. That is exactly what needs to take place. And would you say that it should start? I say that it should start as soon as from an elementary level, because our kids are playing with electronics as soon as they're able to hold it and start pressing keys. And the kids are coming in smarter. Let's just face it, right? They're coming in technically astute. They're playing with technology earlier. They're engaged in technology earlier. And so therefore they want to master the technology, some of them, not everyone. And I remember when I learned programming, the first thing you learn in programming is logic. You have to learn logic. You have to deduce logic, whether it makes sense, whether it's not. You have the syntax and you have the semantics. And so you have to understand what you are programming. So if you do that with integrity, if you do that with understanding the impact of what you're doing, that makes all the difference in them.
That's
really
right. Does. We're ensuring our future, like we said, our path we're today the result of all that past knowledge, and the future depends on what we do today, how we do it, who does it, and why, and the fundamentals, not just perpetuating, a system that doesn't work for everybody, as we know. Why do we have, in America alone, we have 300 million people, right?
Right.
There's about 10 million millionaires. Okay, there's 400 billionaires, the 400. There's a big middle class, because this is what America did. That's how we became a superpower. But there's over 50 million poor people living below the poverty line. They're homeless, and even they can't even afford, they have to work 3 jobs to be able to pay their rent. 50 million poor people in a $20 trillion economy. How's that possible? And it's not about socialism, because again, that's another extreme, and it's not about individualism or capitalism. That's another extreme. It's about the balance, the harmony between the individual and the society. You see, there's a responsibility of the society to the individual. There's a responsibility of the individual to the society. How you grow that balance is determined by who? The persons who are managing that society, who are creating the conditions of equality, of fraternity, and egalitarianism, fraternity, brotherhood. All this. This is what Freemasonry is based on. And again, that's why that organization is really precious and noble in that sense, because they're promoting what humanity actually needs: fraternity, egalitarianism, freedom. Freemason means a free constructor, a free builder of the world, of society, of the future of mankind. It's a free person. That's what a Freemason means. You see, and the instrument they use to create that free person is the liberal arts. That's the example arts that we have. Okay.
Well, I would venture to say that that's what LaserEduLogics is doing. I would venture to say that the open system versus the hermetic system
That's
is,
right.
is where I want to be in terms of the freedom and the understanding and the logic that I can build and learn from and access the information and truly enhance my capabilities of the trivium and the quadrivium
Right.
based on what you're offering. And to me, that's where the heart lies. You know, Masons, they have their props. We're talking about you.
Yes. Well, again, I use the Freemason as a model
Yes.
for us. That's their intention, but in practice, it's a whole different,
It's a whole different
quagmire. And
yeah.
so, yeah, they're caught up in that whole, and plus the hermetic, steel secret society or secret mode in which they were bound to by oath did not allow them to open the way we are, the open system. And so we acknowledge it, and this is what Dr. LaFerriere did, as a Mason. He was one of the first to sound that bell, to ring that bell of freedom, that we can no longer keep ourselves isolated from society or hermetically seal the knowledge. We have to give that knowledge to the world. And that's a responsibility also of that noble organization. They have to transition to the open system. The open system is the model of the new age, and this is why MIT adopted it. All organizations, Obama, and under the with the help of Harvard and MIT, created the open educational department. And they are acting in concert with UNESCO and all this, over 200 universities in Europe and Latin America, all over the world, China. They're all participating in this open educational resource community, this open system that is the true and genuine model of creating this new world that we want, fully educated, completely educated people, the university educated person. Yes.
Excellent. I know that we're almost an hour, coming up on the hour at this time. Do you have any last words that you want to say to our audience before we meet next week?
Yeah, so it's just a matter of stay tuned, tuning in, choose your channels appropriately, keep your attention on what matters, which is self-education and growing individually and socially as a consequence of that. Really, all the resources are now available. Now this attention economy is going to grab your attention and utilize it according to their purposes. But this is where we have to assert our individual power and self-discipline. Now, once you plug in to the liberal arts, they will empower you because they're going to activate those centers in ourselves. But you keep that discipline and you'll see the results. Okay.
Thank you again. That has been Carlos Concepcion in another provocative, deep, conversation that I love in terms of the education and in terms of just overall allowing us to be able to talk about things in such a way that it benefits all. So thank you again, Carlos Concepcion, for coming on The Infinite Way.
Thank you. And thank the audience for participating, listening, and taking action accordingly.
Absolutely. So this has been another episode of The Infinite Way, where spirituality meets humanity. And if you like what you've heard, please like us and hit that subscribe button. And we'll be back. This was part 5, and we will be back with part 6. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Take care.